What's going on, guys? Ted from Immersion here, and I'm back on a very delayed getting back into my DM's Guild Spotlight videos. So I'm sorry for the delay. There's been a lot of other videos and other things coming out, but I finally made it, so here we go. So, full stop, I was asked by the creator of this contest, Nicholas Dean. He asked me on Twitter to do a review of his Path of the Fell Theurge class. This is a barbarian primal path. And there is a lot of kind of lore here, which I'm not going to bother to read through all of this because it sort of, it doesn't give me too much about the class itself. But down here we get a little bit. You can see bloodseer, rage priest, warborn. It's similar to a degree if you're familiar with the old rage mage class, which was a barbarian that had spellcasting. It is available for pay what you want on the Dungeon Masters Guild, so you can go ahead and pay whatever you like, whatever you think it's worth. You can download it, read through it, and then make your decision based on that if you'd like to go back and then throw some support. And I encourage you to always, if you download anybody's content and you do enjoy it, after the fact, if you enjoy it enough to support it, make sure you go back and throw them it could be a small donation. Every little bit helps, just to kind of help encourage them to continue on to make more content. And then again, always take a look down here at the bottom of the discussion and the review section, where you can start a discussion, you can leave your reviews, and always take a look at what other folks have said, which might give you an idea whether or not you want to pay for some of the content that is ones where you actually have there's a nominal amount and you have to pay for it. So, with that little spiel out of the way, let's talk about the Fell Theurge. I will say up front, this is version 1.0. Perhaps some of my comments and some of your comments will help to alter a version 1.5 or a version 2.0. Full stop. I was asked to do this review, but I am still going to be honest because that's just who I am. I think this this primal path is alright for a version 1.0, but I do feel like it could use some tweaking, and hopefully, again, this video will help to facilitate that. I think it has too much. I think it has access to too many abilities, too many powers, and I think either one or the other, and there is some balance, which we'll talk through, but I think it needs a little bit of work. There is a lot of lore here about the class and what where it comes from, and then there's this cool section down here for warborn scars, a D8 table here, to kind of add a little bit of flavor to your Fell Theurge character, your war priest or rage mage or war rage priest, whatever you want to call it. So first thing we see that they get is spells. Okay. Again, I said it was a priest, so you're going to have magic. You do get cantrips, and you get spells. They are limited to the abjuration and evocation spells from the cleric or druid list. I feel like I might probably remove cleric from there and just go with druid, as this is a primal character. This is a barbarian. I imagine that's more druidic magic than priestly cleric magic, but again, rage priest, the seer side of things, makes sense for it to kind of have cleric magic. But what they're kind of going for here, since this is a third caster like a barbarian, similar to your Eldritch Knight or your Arcane Trickster, which gets to choose spells of two different schools from, in those cases, the wizard spell list. So they went with abjuration or evocation from cleric or druid. I would narrow it to one. I think that's a little too much to give them both. Granted, it's spells known, so you don't get a ton, but I would say one or the other. And then, additionally, you kind of learn one extra spell that could be from any school of magic, similar to how an Arcane Trickster and Eldritch Knight works. And then I would just say on top of all of this, per the base, it acts just like it specifically states in the rage feature, while raging, you can't cast or concentrate on spells. That's what it dictates in the barbarian section. So that's balanced in and of itself right there. There's ways to change that in the class, and again, that's part of where I think there needs to be a little bit of balance. But you can get access to these spells, and that kind of lets you be casting spells as a barbarian, but you can't rage and cast. So that kind of evens itself out. Because remember, this is the archetype. You're still getting your rages. You're still getting your rage damage, brutal, critical. All of those things are happening. And then this, like, add the base class, and then you get all of this. So we can scroll down and take a look. Fury points, we'll talk about those. Cantrips, spells known, and then here are your levels 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th spells. So you see you don't get access to 4th level spells till level 19. I'm not sure. I think this lines up with the Eldritch Knight progression, and if it doesn't, it seems silly. So let me just take a quick look while I've got my phone here, and we'll just look to see if the spell list lines up with the Eldritch Knight. One more page. It does. Okay, it does. So it is basically follows the exact progression of the Eldritch Knight class. As far as spell casting goes, which makes sense, it is a 3rd caster. So, you get that. That's pretty powerful in and of itself. Granted, if you look at the Eldritch Knight, you look at the Arcane Trickster, they do get other things on top of just getting spells. So, I feel like that it is important that the Fell Theurge gets those. However, I think the stuff it gets way more powerful than the other 2 classes of similar nature. So let's kind of walk through that. So you get this Supernal Fury, which is represented in these Fury points, which you get a maximum of 10 Fury points at level 19, and they let you do abilities. So there's these things here called Denizens of Fervor. And that's this is sort of talking about all of it. So Denizens of Fervor, you learn 2 at level 3. Unless otherwise noted, you need to be raging to activate them. You learn 1 additional one at 6 and 1 at 14. When you learn another one, you can swap it out for a different one. So that is, again, let's point out that you're getting spells that are stacking up as you go, as well as these, which you're also gaining additional ones. At level 6, Fury of the Divine, as a bonus action, you may spend a spell slot to regain a number of Fury points equal to the level of the spell slot sacrificed up to the maximum as shown in the Fury points table. So you can't gain extra Fury points more than your max. Once you use this feature, you have to finish a long rest. Additionally, when you enter a rage, you may use a Constitution or Wisdom saving throw for your spellcasting ability until your rage ends. That is because there are specific things that let you get access to spells while you're raging. I still feel like that might be a little bit too powerful, but we'll talk about that. Also, I feel like part of the difficulty in playing one of these classes is that it divides your stats, and that's sort of the kind of the crux of like the Eldritch Knight or the Arcane Trickster, is that you then need to add intelligence in as a good stat. The fact that this would let you, when you're, again, only when raging, but substitute Constitution for Wisdom for your casting stat, I feel like that might be a little bit too powerful because it's reducing the amount of stats you need to use, or ability scores you need to use, effectively mitigating some of the own difficulties the class imposes on itself. At 10, Fanatic's Blessing, you gain resistance to a damage type, Force, or Radiant if you're good, Force if you're neutral, or Necrotic if you're evil. Additionally, you may learn 1 greater Denizen of your choice, which is detailed under the greater Denizens of Fervor that are described on page 5. Unless otherwise, you must be raging. You learn 1 additional greater Denizen at 20. Whenever you learn an additional greater Denizen, you can change out one. So you get your Denizens of Fervor here. Sorry, at level 3, 2 at 3, 1 at 6, and 1 at 14. And the greater, you get 1 at 10 and 1 at 20. So only 2. Not too bad. Then Overzealous Onslaught. While in the throes of an Overzealous Onslaught, you gain the following benefits. You can choose to enhance this. This is similar to a Frenzied Rage, where it's an option. You can rage, or you can frenzied rage, or you could, in this instance, Overzealous Onslaught. As a bonus action, when you hit a creature with a melee attack, you may spend 2 Fury points and unleash a burst of Divine Force from your weapon. The attack deals 2d6 extra damage, either radiant, neutral, or radiant, force, or necrotic, in addition to your weapon damage. The target and every creature adjacent to it must make a strength saving throw against your... Again, here it says Rage Priest spell level. It's calling it a Fell Theurge earlier. Just a little bit of grammatical kind of tweaking. Or be knocked prone or pushed 10 feet back. Okay, so you're using your Fury points, which you only get back on a long rest. So let's keep that in mind. The Fury points aren't coming back on a short rest. They're a long rest functionality. So a little bit, upon reading this a little bit closer, I'm starting to think it's less overpowered than I thought. The fact that they are a limited resource, that you do only get them back on a long rest. So you could, at level 14, spend 2 points to add an extra 2d6 damage when you make a melee attack. Let's see. When you hit with a melee attack. So this is like a very, very, very powered down smite. It's only 2d6, and you can't scale it upward. It does work when you hit, so you can activate it on a critical and smite. And then they add the little bit extra strength saving throw. That, I don't know if that's too overpowered, because they do require a saving throw. I think it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for when you hit one person, everybody adjacent to it needs to make a strength saving throw and either be knocked down or pushed back. Again, that doesn't dictate your friendlies, but you know, you're fighting on a cliff edge or something and you just knock all of your allies off the cliff and they all die because of... I guess it's sort of in the overzealous onslaught mindset, but I might just nix that completely, the strength saving throw part, and just go with just the extra damage, because that's not all you get. When a creature succeeds on a saving throw against a cantrip you cast, they take half damage. Okay, so again, this functionality to get access to part of your level 14, your sort of capstone archetype ability, you need to have taken one of the other benisons that will allow you to cast cantrips while raging, or this functionality does nothing for you, because remember, to activate this state you have to already be raging. So what that does is, if you're raging, have the ability to cast cantrips while raging, and they pass the saving throw versus your cantrip, they take half damage. Not an it's not a bad ability. Taking half damage on a cantrip makes you feel a little bit better, but again, you're a barbarian. Cantrips, wizards, and other spellcasting classes use those, and if they miss or they pass the saving throw, they don't do any damage. You can still wreck face with brutal critical on your melee weapon. Just keep that in mind. And you gain 1 extra benison of fervor. I think I was saying favor before. Benison of fervor of your choosing when you enter a rage. This choice can be changed each time you enter a rage. So this is the lesser benison, not the greater one. I don't know. I might nix that too. I don't know. That does sort of limit the ability of what you get. Once you use this feature, you cannot use it again until you finish a long rest. So it's a once per long rest ability, which might, again, help to mitigate some of the things I just mentioned. In addition, you gain a level of exhaustion. Actually, you know what? Reading further, you gain a level of exhaustion, and your hit point maximum is reduced by 1 for each round you remained in this state, plus half your level, until you finish a long rest. Wait a minute. You get a level of exhaustion. Okay. Your hit point maximum is reduced by half your level, plus 1 for each round you remained in this state, until you finish a long rest. Okay, now I'm thinking that might be a little bit underpowered. This is your level 14 ability. So the ability to add extra damage per your limited use of Fury points makes sense. And the fact now that it knocks people prone or pushes them back, I'm fine with that. Again, and then the other one, then I might lose the cantrip piece just because you might not have access to it. And then you basically get 1 benison when you enter your rage, and you can choose which benison it is. So that allows you to have a little bit more customizability to your Fell Theurge, your rage priest, And then, you know what? That is fairly well balanced by giving it reducing your hit point maximum and giving you exhaustion, and it's only once per long rest. So I might lose the cantrip part and then keep the rest of it. And only losing the cantrip, I guess you could choose to take that as the benison from the ability, but let's keep moving on. So, Denizens of Fervor. I'm not going to go through all of these because there's a bunch, and we still want to get to cover some of the greater ones. But you can see any of them here that are denoted with an R require that you have to be raging to use it. So first off, Adamantine Mind. Spend a Fury point whenever you make an Intelligence, Wisdom, or Charisma save, and you can use them to make a Constitution save instead. Okay, that's not too bad. There's a couple that let you get access to spells. Like this one lets you get access to Hex, which you normally wouldn't have. Bloodlust and Magic. This lets you spend a number of Fury points up to half your Wisdom modifier rounded down to give yourself a +1 bonus to hit. This bonus lasts until your rage ends or until you damage a creature with a spell. So that lets you, again, that's a once per long rest feature. It doesn't make your attack magical, it just adds a bonus to your hit, not to your damage. So again, balanced. Some of these, this one lets you get a cantrip from the Evocation School of Magic, from the Wizard spell list, through going under this rite and getting like a brand or a tattoo or a special ritual scar. My only complaint is it changes the damage type of the spell to either be Radiant, Force, or Necrotic. Again, that's fitting into that whole kind of priestly magic thing. I think that might be a little bit too much because a Radiant damage Firebolt is really powerful. Actually, any of those, because Radiant, Force, and Necrotic are 3 of the least resisted damage types. Granted, it is only a cantrip, I'm aware of that. But still, that makes it fairly powerful, and then this one you can choose more than once to get a different cantrip each time. I don't think that's unreasonable. Maybe the damage type might be a little powerful. Let's see. Inexorable castigation. When you're hit, make a reaction, spend Fury points up to your Wisdom mod. The offender takes 1d6 plus your Wisdom mod, plus a d6 per Fury point spent. Additionally, the offender must make a Constitution saving throw. I guess you see this says Savage Theurge again. We got a couple of little tweaks to the grammar here. Or have its movement reduced to 0 once per long rest. That's not too bad. That's a cool use of your reaction. Add to your AC. Here is the Raging Prestidigitator. This is the one I was talking about. The restrictions on spellcasting and concentration while raging don't apply when you use any cantrip you know. Additionally, when you damage a creature with a cantrip, you get the rage damage that you normally get applies to the cantrip damage. Okay, so that's not too bad. And then again, this lets you use a weapon as your spellcasting focus. And then there's a couple other things. This one gives you unarmed strikes that scale similar to a monk, but a little bit slower. Once per long rest, so it's fairly balanced. Again, I think my first read through this, I was a little bit too harsh. Upon reading further, I feel like in my head and my gut is that having all of these spells plus these Benison feature, all these other additional things that you get. Remember, you get a total of 4 of these plus 1 every time you rage using the Overzealous Onslaught. So you're going to have 4 to 5 of these. Some of these, again, Warborn Shaman, choose 2 spells you know. These 2 spells ignore raging and concentration. This basically means that as long as you have Fury points, you can make con saves instead of Wisdom, Charisma, or Intelligence saves. You can get access to unarmed strikes. It's a little bit powerful, and I feel like the bonus feat, I like where they're going with this. I think the feat might be, again, a little bit too powerful. As long as you have the Rage class feature, learn 1 cantrip from the Cleric or Druid list. I've already expressed my interest, maybe just 1 list. Your spellcasting ability for this is Wisdom. You ignore the restrictions for spellcasting and concentration while raging for the purposes of this cantrip. You gain 1 benison of your choice from the benisons of fervor. This benison can only be used while raging. Okay, so that does limit that a little bit. And you gain 2 fury points. These fury points can only be used to fuel your benisons or greater benisons, if any. You gain all spent fury points when you finish a long rest. If you already have the Path of the Theurge, these fury points increase the maximum you would normally have by 2. I didn't read the fact that it was only a while raging ability. I feel like that maybe that's not too powerful, although feats are, the more I look at them and the fact that Wizards of the Coast has been so tight-lipped on releasing additional feats to the game, I always have a little bit of a hard time balancing feats. I have come up with a couple of homebrew ones that I like to use, but I feel like some of that's a little bit hard to balance at times. And then lastly, we have our greater benisons. So let's take a look at these. There are much less. Remember, you'll only have access to 2. Blood-fueled Theurge. You can fuel your spells with fury points instead. This is sort of like sorcery points in this respect, where you can spend a number of fury points to cast a spell you know, with the effective spell slot equal to the number of fury points you spent. This ability can increase the spell level beyond the maximum spell level you currently have, up to maximum of 9th level spells. That's pretty powerful. I think I like that in and of itself. For every level beyond the highest spell slot you can normally cast, your hit point maximum is reduced by 5. The reduction lasts until you finish a long rest. This feature is only usable once per long rest, and additionally, this ignores the rage restriction. Greater Brand of the War Sage. Choose an evocation spell list from the wizard spell list. Cantrip, 1st level, 2nd level, 3rd level, 4th level. You automatically learn these spells when you reach the appropriate level to cast that spell. These spells count as Fell Theurge spells, and they do... See, and again, the damage is Radiant, Force, or Necrotic. Furthermore, these ignore the restrictions while raging. I do think... My one complaint about some of these is that a lot of the abilities ignore the limitation of raging and spellcasting. I realize that that's sort of the crux of the class, but that's also sort of inborn balance from the creators of the game. But if you look at that, an evocation spell, a cantrip, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th level wizard spell. Granted, you won't get access to some of these later, but a radiant damage fireball, a radiant damage lightning bolt, those are very powerful. Force damage lightning bolt, whatever you want, or necrotic even. Those are that's very powerful. Godsight 4 fury points to get True Sight for 60 feet, up to 60 feet until the end of your rage. Once per long rest. Cast Enlarge Reduce. You're immune to the Frightened ability. Primeval Vigor. If you would fall to 0 hit points, you can spend 2 fury points instead to drop to 1 hit point and gain temporary hit points equal to your barbarian level plus your constitution mod. They last until you finish, till they're lost or you finish a long rest. And that's a once per long rest feature. And then lastly, Ruinous Scourge. When you damage a creature with a melee attack, you may spend a number of fury points up to your con or wisdom mod. This attack deals damage equal to 1d12 plus 1d12 per fury point spent beyond the first, in addition to your normal weapon damage. It's Radiant, Force, or Necrotic. When you damage a creature, yeah. And this is once per short rest, so this is sort of the improvement on your Overzealous Onslaught. However, you could, per what I'm reading, you could do both, potentially. Up to your Wisdom or Con mod here, and then this to just really stack your damage. And if you have a crit, and it's a brutal crit, it's going to go... The damage is going to be through the roof. And there's some lore here about Fell Theurges in the Forgotten Realms. And then there's some options here for Primeval Arsenal. These are weapons that basically have the ability to... They do their damage. You can see the damage there. And the thought process being these are savage weapons where they're sort of made from primitive materials. And on a roll of a natural 1, it gets a overall minus damage stack, a -1 to all damage rolls. And if that reaches 5, the weapon breaks. However, on a natural 20, it gets a +2 bonus to the critical damage against targets not wearing metal armor. And then there's some kind of information down here on how to repair. I feel like that pairs pretty well with the new lizard folk race from Volo's Guide to Monsters that has the ability to kind of scavenge and make weapons. And that's pretty much it, guys, for the path of the Fell Theurge barbarian. What do you guys think? Do you think this is too powerful? Am I way off base on my thoughts? Again, it's abjuration and evocation magic. Currently, from a cleric or druid spell list, that means they're going to get access to all of the healing spells that clerics and druids have. So keep that in mind too. You not only are you a barbarian with your base rage feature, with your brutal critical, your reckless attack, your increased movement speed, advantage on dexterity saving throws, all of your base barbarian abilities, plus you're going to have access to spells. Some of those could be healing spells. Then you have these Benisons of Fervor on top of that, which will further alter things. Some of them allowing you to mitigate some of your abilities by spell casting with Constitution instead of Wisdom. And at a high level barbarian, if you made it all the way to 20, you'd have a +4 to that. Just let me know what you guys think. So again, thank you to Nicholas Dean for the suggestion to check out your product here on the Dungeon Masters Guild. Again, there will be a link to this in the description if you'd like to take a look at yourself. This is his first and only release here on the DM's Guild. So, anyway, let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you next time.